Alright, we got some Grim. The Appeal of Satoru Gojo. Now, if you don't know, we reacted Grim back when I first started doing reactions. He dropped a banger on Berserk, so I know this video is he's probably gonna have some interesting appeal. Some interesting side
Since the
reaction.
initial release of the manga in 2018 and the release of the anime in 2020, Jujutsu Kaisen has without a doubt become a household name due to its incredible
Absolutely.
popularity and success. From its unrelenting breakneck pace to its ever-evolving power system and intricately written fight sequences, it's managed to captivate millions worldwide and garnered an extremely passionate fanbase. For
Extremely.
manga that came out so recently to have already outsold giants like Berserk and Tokyo Ghoul is extremely impressive and is an incredible feat to have accomplished within that kind of time frame. Not to mention that the story isn't even over yet, and with the release of more volumes and the inevitable complete anime adaptation of the series, the number of sales will only continue to increase at a rapid pace. I mean, it's an absolute powerhouse, and there's plenty of reasons as to why it's become such a major success. To name a few, outside of the ones I named previously, there's the battle-heavy yet well-structured story, its use of horror and darker themes, and its refreshing execution of common shonen tropes. Though, out of all the
I mean, I feel like the number one reason why Jujutsu Kaisen is doing the numbers that it's doing is because anime is at the most popular it has ever been. Like if Naruto dropped now, it probably would be doing Jujutsu Kaisen numbers. Now that like that's not taking away. Naruto did fantastic numbers. I'm just saying if it dropped now, it probably would do even more amazing than it did.
factors that play into JJK's success, one of the most important is without question the characters. You see, when it comes to a lot of modern shonen, I feel that most of them lack an outstanding cast, and while there definitely are some really great ones, there's also some that are pretty average.
Hey Grim, next time, I'm gonna need you to take another little scroll down, cause this right here, I feel offended about this one. Now I'm not. Somebody might be offended by some other ones, but this one I got a problem with. This is a shot. You didn't have to take that shot. You could have picked another. You probably just shown it and scroll down, but I feel offended.
Lack an outstanding cast, and while there definitely are some really great ones, there's also some that are pretty average. A cast that consists of a few good characters but is primarily filled with forgettable ones is a major deterrent for me as a reader, and as someone who values characters a lot, it's something that just sucks to run into, especially if I enjoy the premise or the art style. However, when it
Yeah.
comes to JJK, that's not the case, cause, in my opinion, the cast of JJK is one of the absolute best in modern shonen. From its great character designs, well-written character arcs, and the excellent sense of individuality for each member, it basically ticks all the boxes off for what makes a great set of
Yeah.
characters, but most importantly, the cast is extremely likable. Sure, there might be a handful that aren't necessarily great, though when it comes to the majority, they're an extremely lovable bunch, and it's not as if any of the casts become uninteresting or forgettable as Gege gives a fair bit of attention to each. Whether it be protagonist, antagonist, or side character, so much of the cast get their own moments to shine. This allows for Gege to give a more in-depth look at each member of the cast, which in turn greatly factors into the overall appeal and quality of the characters themselves. It's genuinely an outstanding on
I mean, like, I feel like this is a yes and no. I mean, for manga readers, y'all are probably like absolutely, but just for where we are in the anime, it's like we've been introduced to a lot of characters, and yeah, they've been like shown, but like I feel like if it's not the main circle of characters that they've talked about, they're not really like likable. Like all the other people from the other school, like except for the my brother, that guy, like them niggas, the robot guy that just showed up, like I didn't I didn't really care for them guys. Now maybe like down the manga, down the road, maybe with the Shibuya arc they get some more shine. But like at least for the anime readers right now, it's like yes and no on this. But I'm pretty sure the manga readers are like absolutely character development's amazing. All the characters are perfect. So I respect the
ensemble,
groups.
and I honestly can't praise it enough. Though, out of all the characters within Jujutsu Kaisen, I think no one else stands out more than the honored one himself, Satoru Gojo. Now, Gojo is by all means one of the most popular characters in JJK, and I don't think that's surprising to many.
Yeah.
Despite not even being the main protagonist, Gojo's popularity heavily outweighs
Okay, let's talk about this real quick. Cause I think this is like not taken away from Gojo, but I think this is an important thing and the reason why Gojo is so popular. It feels like in most shows, if you have a like influential side character that just is on some savage shit or just doing some crazy shit, they're 9 times out of 10 more popular than the main character. Like, so I feel like it's not surprising. Plus, he's probably gonna list out all the appeals that this nigga has on why he's so popular. But it's just like it was a layup. He drew this nigga up and knew what was gonna happen. But this was a layup right here.
He's a large majority of the cast, as he's placed in the top 3 in every popularity poll and has a comfortable 50,000 favorites on my anime list. As much as I like Itadori, Gojo is basically the poster boy for the series. I mean, that's just how popular he is. So, when looking at the scale of Gojo's popularity and being a massive fan of the character myself, I wanted to answer the question, what makes Gojo so appealing? Well, if I'm being honest, it's a pretty easy question to answer. Simply put, good looking, charismatic, overpowered. Now, realistically, I could just end the video right here because that's not a bad answer. However, it's an extremely basic one and gives pretty much zero insight into Gojo's character. So instead of a surface level type of answer, I want to go more in depth and go over 3 detailed reasons as to what makes Gojo such an incredibly appealing character. Though, I need to preface that when I begin to go over why these attributes make Gojo so appealing, they're my own personal opinion. And because it's my
Hey, that doesn't work around here, Grim. We don't care if it's your own personal opinion. I'm still gonna debate your ass if you say something I don't like. I'm just saying that.
my own opinion, I'll be explaining in terms as to why he's so appealing to me. See, I'm not a psychologist and can't necessarily give definitive reasons as to why Gojo was appealing on such a large scale, and while my 3 reasons might apply to others' perception of the character, everyone's opinion is different, and they undoubtedly have more reasons besides the 3 I'll be covering. So, again, when I explain why
there's definitely more reasons than 3. Like, it's not even questionable. It's at least like maybe like 50 easy layups that you can say why this nigga is so popular.
these factors play into his appeal, it'll be through my own perception and why he's appealing to me. Now, with that out of the way, let's start things off and begin with the simplest reason, his personality. When it comes to a character's personality, I feel that it plays a major role in someone.
But I feel like in JJK, you gotta take like the personalities in whole, right? Like there's not really a character in the show with a bad personality. So it's like all the personalities are good, they're uplifting, they're fun, and then it's just like the cherry on top is Gojo. Like he's just the most out of everyone. He just has the most outgoing personality out of a very outgoing cast. So he stands out.
One's opinion of that character's personality has the ability to make or break that opinion and the overall enjoyment that someone would derive from the character. If a character doesn't have an aspect of their personality that you connect with or find enjoyable, then your outlook will be negative, and of course, when it's the other way around, it would be positive. Regardless, personality is key when it comes to a character's appeal, and in the case of Gojo, I personally really enjoy his personality, but it's sort of a mixed bag. And no, I don't mean that as in there's things I strongly dislike about his personality. What I mean is that there's just a lot of different elements to it. For starters, when it comes to first impressions, Gojo comes off as a little bit twisted and conceited. Every time he interacts with someone he has a poor opinion of, like the higher-ups or his enemies, he is beyond disrespectful. By use of insults or threats, he belittles those who might pose as a symbol of authority or anyone showing any malicious intent towards him. He also annoys other characters, can be cold towards his comrades, and tends to have a carefree attitude at times when he probably shouldn't. Now, from that description, you probably wouldn't say that Gojo is appealing whatsoever and are most likely questioning.
No, nobody's gonna say that. Let's be honest. People like that type of attitude. These are all pluses. You didn't list a single negative. Those are all pluses, right?
When I said that there wasn't anything I really disliked about his personality. However, those quote-unquote negatives should be taken at face value, as in my opinion, they're actually positives that stem from the more likable aspects of his personality. The conceit, disrespect, and carefree attitude that he gives off all come from this innate sense of extreme confidence that he exudes. A confidence that for other characters might seem arrogant, but in the case of Gojo, it's entirely justified because he has every right to be that confident. I mean,
That's a fact. It's like you wouldn't like Gojo. Like if you have an overpowered character and they're not just crazy cocky, you wouldn't like that nigga. Think of every overpowered, super smart ass nigga you know, like Life, for example. Niggas like that nigga because he's cocky, even though that was his demise. Like it just throws away having an overpowered character that's not like, if he's humble, like throw that nigga in the garbage, bruh.
Gojo. He's the strongest sorcerer of his time. The guy's so powerful that he's quite literally untouchable and basically serves as the pillar in which humanity has to rely on, and he knows it. So when he's brash towards those he doesn't respect,
I should make a Gojo is Superman video. Let me stop.
Seems to be carefree, it doesn't come off as irritating. Rather, because he's so confident, it comes off as extremely cool. A character who's a rebel that oozes charisma and paves his own road is a formula for a really cool personality, and Gojo is the result. Plus, he's also pretty funny. Those times when he might annoy other characters or come off as cold towards his comrades are used for comedic scenes within the story. Along with the charismatic side of Gojo's personality, he can also be very lighthearted and have a childish attitude, which results in moments of levity and adds another layer to his personality. And despite the carefree attitude that he might put on with the lighthearted side of his personality, he can also be incredibly serious and caring. While Gojo is the strongest and is viewed as this extremely powerful sorcerer, at the end of the day, he's human. And because he's human, he cares about the people around him and those that are dear to him. This can be seen with his relationship with his students, co-workers, Amanai, and of course his prior best friend. Now, some of his ways of showing he cares can be sort of roundabout, but that doesn't negate from the fact that he's a caring individual.
Absolutely.
Gojo, in my opinion, isn't a cold-hearted person at his core. Although while Gojo is compassionate,
Who would think that? Well, what would make you think that though? Like just because he's like cocky and rude sometimes, like that he's cold-hearted. Hey, like I don't know who would think that.
He also has a bit of a sadistic side to his personality. As seen during his second fight with Toji, his fight with Sukuna, and the Shibuya incident, Gojo enjoys violence. Whenever he begins to get serious in combat, you can immediately see his demeanor shift within him as it transitions from...
See, now I will argue that this is a whole point in itself. Now, like, wrapping it up in personality isn't a bad thing, at least it's here. But I feel like this is one of the main reasons why he's so popular. Like, it's like Gus from Berserk. Like, one of the main reasons why he's so popular, despite his tragic, like, even with his tragic backstory and all his character, is the fact is when he starts boxing, you know what's about to happen. You know how he's about to be in them fights. He's about to straight brawling. He don't care about nothing, nobody. That's one of the main reasons. So I feel like this right here could be its own, like it could be its own point. But it's amazing. So the fact that you put this on here, even if it's like a self spy in personality, that's a good put down right there.
From a more playful state to that of a violent, bloodthirsty animal. To see him relish in violence and emit this overwhelming sense of bloodlust as he viciously fights his enemies with a smile on his face is quite frankly pretty terrifying. Though, if I'm being honest, this is one of my favorite aspects of Gojo's personality because it shows that he's flawed. As many good components a character has to their personality, if they don't have a bit of edge to them, then I usually find the character to be less intriguing. Gojo's taste for violence adds to the overall appeal of his personality by showing that despite his standing in the jujutsu world, he's far from perfect, which in turn reinforces the fact that Gojo is, like I said before, human. And by reinforcing that fact, it also makes Gojo more relatable since it's impossible for anyone to be perfect. This, alongside the various other points I made, like his charisma.
Hey, hold on. Let's just say this. If you think you're relatable to Gojo, hey, I'm gonna need you to get out of La La Land. You are not relatable to that nigga. Nowhere, not even close. 2% maybe. You are nowhere close relatable to that nigga. Please step back. You need to get your self-awareness up, okay? Okay.
Charisma, cool factor, compassion, lightheartedness, and confidence all merge together to create this incredibly enjoyable yet flawed personality. A personality that I find to be really interesting and one that plays a major factor in why I find Gojo to be such an appealing character. But now that I've covered his personality, let's jump into reason number 2,
okay,
that being the strongest.
See,
now, first things first.
Before he talks about this is another thing. Like this is a big reason. I'm glad this is a big point. I feel like you should talk about this. I don't know if you will, but the fact is he's the strongest and he's not the main character. Like, just think about it. Any show, who's the strongest character that's not the main character, or like one of the strongest characters that's not the main characters, they're probably one of the most popular shows in the character. I'm not even about to list names. All you gotta do is think about it. So the fact, just with that alone, definitely deserves a spot on that list.
So I just want to specify that while I've titled this section The Strongest, I'm not implying that one of the main reasons I find Gojo's character so appealing is because he's OP, but I suppose that does factor into it. As I previously mentioned, he's the strongest Jujutsu sorcerer alive, so much so that the balance of the entire Jujutsu world shifted when he was merely born. Gojo's armory of the six eyes, and by extension his mastery of the limitless technique alongside his high level of intellect and immeasurable amount of curse energy is extremely overpowered and shows how fitting the title of the strongest is. I mean, the guy's leagues above everyone else in his era, which in my opinion plays into his cool factor that I spoke about, since being that strong is just inherently cool. However, like I said before, his strength isn't one of the main reasons as to why I find him to be such an appealing character. Rather, the aspect of being the strongest that I find incredibly appealing isn't the strength that it takes to earn that title, it's actually the ramifications of it. And while Gojo may love the feeling of being the strongest as it gives him a sense of importance and fuels his cocky attitude, I feel that the ramifications of it are far more impactful on his character. You see, from the second Gojo first entered the world, he was given an incredible burden to bear. Even if the gift of the six eyes that he was bestowed granted him immense power, it also came with the weight of the world placed directly on his shoulders. And with that weight came an overwhelming sense of responsibility, the pressure to meet everyone's expectations, and being viewed as an object of strength rather than an actual person. Though, while young Gojo definitely rejected the notion of responsibility in Jujutsu, after the events of Hidden Inventory when he slowly became the strongest, he understood that it was something he needed to accept. Having to learn to understand the weight and responsibilities of his power while being objectified for it undoubtedly shaped Gojo into the character that he is today. Not to mention the psychological influence that comes with being the strongest. I mean, the immense pressure of having that title definitely plays a role in Gojo's overall psyche, but more specifically, I think it has a major effect on his mindset. For instance, due to the tremendous difference in strength between himself and everyone else in the Jujutsu world, for some particular reason, Gojo's mind warped itself to the point where he became incapable of truly connecting with anyone else. This massive gap in power made Gojo feel as if he couldn't relate to anyone, since in his mind, no one could possibly understand what it's like to bear the weight of his burden, which in turn results in one of the most significant ramifications of being the strongest, his solitude. See, Gojo is alone. And even though he has people around him and those he cares for like his students, he's incapable of forming a genuine personal connection with them due to his warped mindset. However, that wasn't always the case, as the title of the strongest wasn't always singular, but rather plural. To be precise, it was a duo, with half of the pair obviously being Gojo, and the other, his best friend Geto. Now, Gojo and Geto's friendship is obviously very crucial to the events of JJK, but it's also an incredibly significant factor of Gojo's character. Since Geto was on a similar stature and power with Gojo, he was the only one Gojo ever viewed as an equal, and because of that, he also was the only one who could relate to him. So when it came to the title of the strongest, rather than it be applied to an individual, they used the term to refer to the two of them together. But that would soon change, as after the events of Hidden Inventory and Gojo's rematch with Toji when he awakened the true power of the limitless technique, the hierarchy in strength took an abrupt shift. From what was once the duo saying we're the strongest transitioned to just Gojo being the strongest, resulting in a distance between the two which would eventually be followed by Geto's fall from grace into darkness. A fall that heavily impacted Gojo, since despite being the strongest, he wasn't able to save the only person who had the ability to stand alongside him, but most importantly, he couldn't save his friend. This would only rekindle the feeling of loneliness he experienced prior to meeting Geto, which would now be amplified by the newfound isolation of being the strongest and the loss of someone he could finally relate to.
Now, I find this interesting because you like him, you think he's appealing because of the title and the effects that it has on him. And that's such an interesting way to look at a character. I like that look. That's like way beyond surface level, like, you know, that title of the strongest, the effects that it plays on him in every way makes you like him even more. That is a W way to look at that, Graham. That's a fantastic way to look at that.
Though, while that loss may have brought feelings of solitude and the pain that coincides with them, it also played a major role in fueling his dream. Now, while Gojo's dream is definitely a product of what happened to Geto, as he doesn't want anyone else to follow in Geto's footsteps, I feel that there's a more selfish reason on Gojo's behalf as to why his dream was initially created. But before I go into that, I should probably explain his dream. Essentially, Gojo's dream is to completely reset the Jujutsu world. In his eyes, the current state of it is rotten, ran by higher-ups who show no empathy and are cowards. And while Gojo could just kill them, it would ultimately serve no purpose as they'd just be replaced, causing the cycle of the system to simply reset itself rather than it being torn down. So instead of cold-blooded murder, he turned to education, where he'd be able to teach and influence a new generation of sorcerers with new ideals instead of those of the past. And by doing so, he can foster a strong and intelligent group to work alongside him and bring about a new era and shape the future of the Jujutsu world, which is an extremely ambitious dream. But if one man could pull it off, it would without a doubt be Gojo. Now, like I mentioned previously, one of the reasons his dream was initially thought up was to prevent anyone turning out like Geto, and obviously, the reason on paper is to reset the Jujutsu world for the betterment of society and the new generation, which is definitely a major reason as it's something he truly believes in and strives for. But the main reason behind Gojo's dream that I want to elaborate on, and the one that factors into his appeal, is his goal to cure his own loneliness. See, by gathering and raising strong allies, he'll without a doubt bring about a change to the current order, but at the same time, he'll be raising people strong enough that could possibly relate to him. Though, while no one will ever truly understand the weight of his burden of being the strongest due to his lineage and the six eyes, if this new generation is powerful enough, they'll have a better understanding of the burden that comes with being strong, which in turn would make it possible for Gojo to potentially form a connection. And for someone who's been suffering in their own sense of isolation for so long, having people who could even sort of understand what comes with tremendous strength would be more than enough for him to finally feel as if he's not alone anymore. So why does all this factor into why I find Gojo to be such an appealing character? Well, it's a few different things. For one, it shows that Gojo is vulnerable, which adds an entire new layer to his character and makes him all the more interesting. Despite all the problems that his strength might be able to fix, it doesn't have the ability to mend his own, and is the cause for a lot of them. Gojo might be known as the honored one and the strongest, but at the end of the day, he's got struggles like you and me. Struggles that everyone can sympathize with, and for someone who basically has the powers of a god and—
Okay, Grim. So you like that? So this is one of the reasons you like him, because you can find some relation. Hey, like I said, Grim, you cannot relate to this motherfucker. Take a step back. I don't care how in depth you want to go to. You can't relate.
in the universe they live in, it really grounds Gojo's character. Obviously, I'm not saying Gojo's precise struggles are something everyone can connect with as his are brought upon by a fictional source of power, but the core of those struggles—
this boy Grim, bro, he be talking sometimes. Look, how you know I was gonna say that, Grim? How you know I was gonna say that?
very much are, as they're inherently human, which in turn makes Gojo incredibly relatable. Loneliness, the desire to connect with others, and a metaphorical sense of baggage or weight are all very relatable things, and to see a character deal with these things on such a personal level when you've been through those same struggles makes it feel as if you're kindred spirits and creates a natural sense of appeal.
But you're not.
And while Gojo deals with the struggles on a daily basis just like you and me, one of his most appealing factors is his response to them. Instead of running away or ignoring them, Gojo presses onward and faces them directly by taking action. He chooses to fight back, not wanting to let the ramifications of his strength push him deeper into the chilling depths of his own isolation. Gojo's ability to fight through his struggles while continuing to work towards achieving his dream is an incredibly admirable characteristic and makes me want to root for the guy all that much more, thus factoring into his appeal. From the layers it adds to his character, the relatability of his struggles, and his admirable ability to press onward, these attributes that originate from the ramifications of being the strongest are easily some of my—
Let me talk to you real quick. I swear you use ramifications like 12 times in this video. I'm gonna need you to get in the dictionary, pick up the thesaurus, and learn some synonyms. I hear ramifications one more time, Grim.
favorite aspects of his character and are without a doubt one of the main reasons as to why I find it to be so appealing. And yeah, that wraps up reason number 2. But now with that covered, let's jump into the last section of this video with the third and final reason, his complexity. The complexity of Gojo is something I wanted to say for last, as it almost serves as a sort of metaphorical umbrella that encapsulates the first 2 reasons and Gojo's character as a whole. Now that's not to say that the first 2 reasons—
I just want to say, you could completely chat right here. So I'm good. If you pull this off right, Grim, the level of respect I'm going to have for you is next level. Because I completely expect someone to just chat and recap everything that they said in this video when they say something like this. So I'm gonna see how you pull it off here.
Exists solely because of his complexity, since that just wouldn't be true as they're their own things. However, they do play a part in it, and that's mainly due to the fact that the term complexity in regard to a well-written character is just really broad. See, when someone refers to a character's complexity, what they're talking about is the character's layers that are brought upon by development and growth. Layers
also,
are
please teach these niggas about complexity, please. Because people talk about Sasuke's not complex. People talk about all these characters not complex and they have no goddamn knowledge. So please teach these goddamn normies some knowledge.
Essentially elements that add to a character's overall structure, from stuff like their motivation and mannerisms to their outlook and mindset. But at the end of the day, what it means in simplest terms is that the character is complex, and for a character to be considered complex, they need to have an abundance of these layers that contain depth and provide substantial insight to the character as a whole. So when I say that my first two reasons play a part in its complexity, it's because they can be considered components of it and be slotted into those layers as it covers a lot of ground, hence the metaphorical umbrella. But essentially, what I'm really trying to say is that Gojo is an extremely complex character. I would argue the most complex in the entire cast of JJK, and as someone who heavily values a character's complexity, this undoubtedly is a large factor as to why I find Gojo to be so appealing. I mean, I wouldn't have made it one of the main 3 reasons and section an entire part of the video on it if that weren't the case, so yeah. I love the fact that Gojo is really complex. See, in my opinion, the more complex the character, the better. A character with rich, intricate layers that provides depth and substance is far more appealing to me than, say, a character with few layers or one that's rather one-dimensional. It also allows for the character to feel incredibly engaging and interesting, resulting in a stronger connection you feel towards the character and boosting that sense of overall investment and likability. I really do think that complexity is pretty vital when it comes to a character's appeal, and Gojo is a great example of that. Now, am I saying that Gojo is the most complex character in anime and manga? No, but there's so much more to him than meets the eye. At first glance, he might just come off as yet another boring, overpowered character. However, that couldn't be farther from the truth, as the guy's got layers upon layers upon layers to his character. Honestly, I can make an entire video specifically dedicated to his complexity. He's one of those characters that with the more time you process them, the more you realize how intricate they truly are. I mean, there's so much that can be discussed when it comes to Gojo's complexity. You could talk about the dualities of his overall nature, the progression of his ideals, his unhinged yet composed mental state during combat, or even the reasoning behind the cheerful face he occasionally puts on in front of his students. And that's just scraping the tip of the iceberg. I could go on and rattle off different factors of his complexity, but that seems like it would be a bit overboard, so instead I'll briefly go over a couple that I find to be some of the most noteworthy. Firstly, Gojo has this steadfast desire to protect the youth and, in his words, the best years of their life. This is pretty evident from his interference with Yuji and Yuta's executions, his guidance as a teacher in the dream he set out to accomplish. Hell, he even respected the wishes of the man who brought upon the absolute worst experience in his life and looked after the guy's kid. So, where does all this stem from? Well, when it comes to my interpretation, there's a couple different reasons. The obvious one being Amanai, having seen what her life was like bound to something she didn't desire, only to then be murdered and have her life taken away from her, scarred Gojo to his core. So, by protecting the youth, he can try and make it so no one else will ever have to endure the suffering Amanai went through. And the other reason...
Okay, he's about to... I was gonna say the other reason, but this nigga Grim just won't allow me to talk. Okay.
Being that Gojo never really got to enjoy his own youth to the fullest, from acquiring the responsibilities and burden of being the strongest at such a young age to the loss of his best friend and the deaths of Amanai and Kuroi, Gojo came face to face with the harsh realities of this world far too soon. The quote-unquote best years of their lives was something he didn't get to fully experience, as his own were violently ripped away.
Alright, sorry to cut you off, Grim, but you just did it to me, so... I would say there's a third reason here, and it's back to what he said earlier. The fact that he wants to foster these people into his own allies. So it's like shooting 2 birds with 1 stone. You know, like, of course he's about to do that.
Away from him and torn to absolute shreds. Gojo's protection of the youth allows him to look out for them so that they might be able to enjoy their adolescence to the absolute fullest like he never could. And secondly, the next factor in his complexity that I find to be one of the most noteworthy is his moral ambiguity. Throughout the course of JJK's story, the evolution of Gojo's morals has been quite fascinating to say the least. During the events of Hidden Inventory, Gojo's morality is first established to be a bit questionable. See, Gojo in his youth didn't particularly care for anyone he deemed weak, claiming that it was a pain to look out for them and just had an overall nasty outlook when it came to normal civilians or sorcerers he didn't consider strong. And while he still protected them, he viewed it more as a chore rather than something that was necessary or something he cared about. Though, that opinion on the weak in his morals would change after Amanai's death, as the mental repercussions of failing to protect someone altered his view to the point where saving and protecting people became a priority. Basically, he adopted Geto's previous mindset of Jujutsu existing.
I was gonna say this. I was gonna say they had a switch in mindset. And like, you might be like, oh, that's fucking obvious, but I'm a fucking anime watcher, so give me a break. Okay? But I think that's another, like, that's just a well-written part and how, like, Geto and everything comes together.
To protect the weak before Geto's view shifted to the polar opposite. Now with that, you could say you had a good idea about where Gojo's morality sits at, however there's still more to it, as the events of Shibuya shed more light on the matter.
Please don't.
As I mentioned previously, Gojo isn't cold-hearted at his core, though that's not to say that he's not capable of being cold-hearted, as he very much is. During his fight in Shibuya, despite making it a priority to protect the weak, he allowed some of them to die at the hands of cursed spirits, and it's not as if he wanted them to die, as he was clearly distraught witnessing the murder of innocents surrounding him, but he was willing to make certain sacrifices in order to achieve the larger goal at hand. So despite the protection of innocent lives being a core staple in both his morals and his role as the strongest, he's fully capable of letting his morality falter. I mean, even if it was...
What is that? What is that game? Oh my god, it's like the railway, the rally. Oh my, I am fucking stupid. It's like a game where they give you two like morally tragic options and you gotta choose one. It's like the trolley effect or something. He was pretty much in a trolley effect, you know. So I mean, I see what you're saying, but I feel like any person, no matter their morals, like, you know, they're gonna have to make some type of decision there.
Was the best.
Especially like, oh my, why do I keep doing that? Especially a nigga like Gojo. Like, you know, he was in a position where he had to make something shake. He had to make something happen.
He could possibly do to keep casualties at a minimum, or was sorry about not being able to save everyone and promised to exorcise the spirits in return, it doesn't negate from the fact that he let innocents die. While he may be fighting for humanity's sake, Gojo isn't exactly a hero. He's a man with a good heart but is willing to muddy his moral compass when he deems it necessary. The contradicting nature of the willingness to sacrifice innocents yet wanting to save them is an incredibly intriguing trait of Gojo's morality, resulting in an ambiguous and thought-provoking set of morals. Now, just to clarify again, those are only two factors of Gojo's complexity, and I only went over them briefly.
I feel like that's a normal thing, because a hero is not realistic, so it's more of a realistic moral set that he has, and you know he has his you know outliers, you know, things that he does or say, but you know what he did is very like normal, like realistic. If a normal person was in them circumstances, they would have that type of decision making.
Well, there's so much more he could say about either of those layers, and so much more to say about his complexity in general as that rabbit hole goes deeper and deeper and deeper. Gojo is an incredibly layered character, and with those layers comes an insane amount of depth and a whole new insight to the most powerful sorcerer in the modern era. And as I mentioned before, I just love complex characters. It makes them so much more compelling and interesting, and Gojo's complexity is one that's exceptionally intricate and is easily one of the main reasons as to why I find him to be such an appealing character. The appeal of any character within any piece of media is always going to be a tricky subject to tackle, since there isn't an exact right answer. Obviously there's stuff that most people can agree on, but for the most part it really narrows down to your own perception. Even when it comes to a popular franchise like JJK and a character like Gojo where there's a billion different opinions, at the end of the day, it really comes down to what makes them appealing to you. And to me, Gojo is appealing because of his personality, the ramifications of being the strongest, and his complexity. Now, of course, I have a ton of other different reasons as to why I find Gojo to be appealing, and I'm sure there'll eventually be more as that appeal keeps on growing the more I analyze Gojo's character, but I feel that the ones I covered throughout this video serve as major factors in that appeal. Hopefully, over the course of this analysis, I might have been able to offer some new insight and potentially answer the question as to what makes Gojo such an incredibly appealing character. But yeah, that's it for this one. Thank you for watching, I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a good one.
Alright.
Peace.
Another fantastic video by Grim. You know, I don't know why I'm not subscribed to Grim. My bad. Anyway, I want to say this. This is why I like these type of videos on YouTube. I love reacting to any type of opinionated video, especially anime. Like, I wish more of the creators in the space would make opinionated videos like this. Because there's people like me, and there's people like Grim. Grim has this side of Gojo, you know, he relates to it. And there's other aspects, but that's just the one that I'm going to use. Is why he's appealing to Grim. But for me, it's the complete opposite. Because I'm more of a realist. I know how of a complex, weird character that Gojo is, and I know that I am not a Gojo. I will never be a Gojo, and that's why he's interesting. The things that he does, how he interacts. It's a character that I know that I'm never gonna be or be like at all. So it's like, that's very amusing. It's very amusing and intriguing to see the different sides to things. So if you're a creator in the YouTube space, and thank you Grim for making this banger of a video, I'm calling to you to drop some opinionated anime content. Please. Please and thank you. Once again, amazing video, Grim. You keep dropping. Listen here, Grim. I'm talking to you. You keep dropping. Don't stop. All right? There's big things for you, buddy. All right.